Welcome, everyone. I am Avtar Simrit. I'm here with Joseph Alexander. I am a Kundalini yogi, an author, and a musician, and have been studying spirituality and the occult ever since I was a teenager. So that's a long time. And Joseph, you want to briefly tell the audience who is tuning in on YouTube who you are and what you do?
Well, to say shortly, I've been studying called, or basically Kundalini, since 1975, when I turned 25. I had a lot of experiences growing up, and I couldn't put them into any context. And it seemed like Gopi Krishna's autobiography about Kundalini and Aurobindo's 20 books or so on philosophy seemed to really coincide uh, to all my problems, all the things that happened to me. So I've been studying them for years now. But basically, my career was I got a degree in architecture in '73, but I went into art, and I've been an artist for 35 or so years, did murals, paintings. And then later on, after I had some health problems, I took about 10 years and studied mythology and particularly fairy tales, and realized that the same motifs and symbols within all the narratives are reflected in mythology, the fairy tale narratives. So I have a book on that. I'm just trying really hard to finish it. It's been 10 years and I'm just having it sort of stuck. But
Cool. Well, will that be out in the near future, you think?
I think I just need some help with it and
Okay.
somebody to give me some feedback. But it is written, and I did the illustrations, and I just have some charts to do, but I need some feedback and somebody to professional editor.
Definitely. So
Well,
the audience who is interested in this type of material, definitely keep your eyes open for Joseph's book when it comes out. And you also have a website, a blog. What is that called?
that blog website is mythicspiral.com. It's MYTHIC spiral, SPIRAL.com. And I have maybe 15 or 20 articles on anywhere from the virgin birth to Little Red Riding Hood, you know, some of the basic classic fairy tales and how they relate to the path towards enlightenment.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of great information on Joseph's website, and I'll definitely put a link to that in the description of the video when it's up on YouTube. So today we're going to be discussing enlightenment. So do you want to start us out briefly, an introduction on enlightenment and some of the points that we're going to be discussing today?
All right. Well, basically from some of Gopi Krishna's writings and from my experiences for the last 20, 30 years in all the studying, I'll just give you a quote from Gopi Krishna. The mystical experience transforms the personality. Most often, it occurs spontaneous. I can't even say it. It's a brief duration, but on occasion can become a permanent feature of consciousness. Basically, what they're saying is that when people, after meditating for years and years, or spontaneously, they experience a bliss in a higher form of consciousness.
Right.
What is regular waking consciousness. And there's a whole list of things of effects on your body and mind and spirit that occurs. And so one of the effects is a sensation of light, internal and external. even outside objects may take on a luminous glow, overwhelming sense of awe and wonder. Basically, Gopi Krishna said, the more amazing feature of my experience consists in this: the enchanting light I perceive both internally and outside is alive. It pulsates with life and intelligence. It is like an infinite ocean of awareness pervading my own small pool of consciousness within the whole universe. I perceive with my senses. Now, in 1979, I had a Kundalini awakening, and basically, it was like Christmas Eve, and I woke up from a deep sleep, and I just felt this fantastic light in my head. And the next day, this is just a short version of it.
Right.
Everything looked brighter. I don't even know how to explain it. It looked like it was alive. Even the doorknobs and the foliage outside, everything just shined with a iridescent light. But internally, also between waking up and at that time, when I woke up from a deep sleep, this gigantic light just exploded in my head. And it sort of felt like I was the whole universe.
Right.
All fear, after that, I have no fear of death. It was just, that's it. You know, people talk about a near-death experience. Well, this it's not a near-death, it's like a near-life experience. It's the greatest thing that can happen to you. But that's your energy, your sublimated sexual energy, your chi energy in your whole body, a prana, it rises up through your spine, through subtle, and it goes into your, they call it the cave of Brahman, but you know, these are all technical terms relating to the body, but the experience is psychological and physical and mental. And so when people talk about enlightenment, in a sense, that's what they're talking about, because it has to do with light, internal light. And it's not so much the idea that you're aware of all the things that are going on, you know, philosophically, and you're enlightened in the sense, the Western sense of view that you have, you know, you accept everybody, you know that. This is entirely different. This has to do, when you say you're enlightened, you have a sense of bliss and immortality that you take with you. Now, that can happen, and it may last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe 30 seconds. But to be fully enlightened, that's a whole nother issue. That may take years or takes lifetimes, where you're in that experience of the cosmic light all the time.
Right. So can enlightenment come in stages? Like they talk about awakening in stages, you know? So you can have an experience of enlightenment, but then it kind of builds. Like you said, it could last, you know, a couple minutes or, you know, days or whatever, but it's not necessarily permanent right away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, that's because it's biological. It's sort of like you put a seed in the ground, it doesn't become an apple tree in 10 minutes. It takes 7 years to become enlightened. It's like anything, your nerves have to adjust to the higher energy, and you also have to have the right pranic fuel in your body and be morally upright and or conscious. I wouldn't, or you know, they're sinners, whoever they are. Anybody can become enlightened if they've reached a point where their nervous system is ready for the experience.
Right.
It's for everybody. It's sinners, saints, and thieves, you know, whatever. Because according to like the spiritual evolution, it's not just one particular race or person that's close to God. It's the whole human race is evolving there.
Right.
It's a state of consciousness that's above our standard that's happening right now, where we see things and we see them not as part of us. They're just out there and we're here, you know.
Right.
But
But
there's
in
other
but
parts of it. Um, you know, one of the things that happens is you have an unshakable conviction about the reality of the experience.
right.
In other words, nobody, once this happens, nobody's going to change your mind
Mm,
because you can't prove it to somebody else because it happens internally.
right, exactly.
And it's probably the greatest experience a person can have.
Hmm. But when you have that experience, you realize that you can trust your own experience. And that's why, like you were describing, it's unshakable certainty that it's real, but it's a subjective experience, but you know that you can trust that experience because it was real. I mean, it's hard to explain in,
Yeah,
physical
it is.
terms.
Where you're conscious of your consciousness. And
Right,
most times, every person is conscious of what's outside them. Oh, there's avatar, there's a camera, there's a light.
right.
You never come to, well, who's seeing that light? Who's seeing that person? Who's
Mm,
the one who experiences everything?
right,
When you go into samadhi, you experience the experiencer, which is connected to reality of the whole universe.
exactly.
So that's what comes basically unshakable in that sense.
Right. And what I understand is that, and what you were saying, this experience is universal and a natural phenomenon, meaning that everyone has the potential to experience this. Like the seeds are within everyone, which seems to suggest that the essence of who you are, your consciousness, is it is universal. Like everyone, it's the same for everyone, if you understand what I'm saying. The essence, your essence, the essence in every being is the same essence.
Right. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's so hard to get to understand
Mm-hmm.
because at the deeper level, we're all one, but at our physical level, we're all separate.
Right.
So it's a combination of opposites.
Mm.
And we come to earth to bring that spirit of the divine into the human body.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, we're raising up the whole vibration of everything and everybody when we experience higher realms because we're bringing it down into physical matter. And,
Exactly.
uh, so it, even you have a certitude of one's own immortality. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's Ramakrishna was like that. He just was a great Indian saint, and people who came around him, they just anybody who has this experience, they become magnetic. Everybody just wants to be close to them because
Mm.
all your thoughts are slowed down and your mind's not like a monkey jumping around, just like a pool of ocean water. It's
Right.
cooling, and that's what comes. People like Christ and all these other great masters are so magnetic and cause such a great change in the reality.
Mm.
For one, they're bringing down a higher spiritual energy that goes through the whole human race.
Yeah. And
And it, so,
is sorry, is that what Jesus was describing when he said the peace that passeth all understanding?
well, yeah, the best way to understand Christ is to understand him as an avatar.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
we'll get into that in another video
Mm.
because all the sayings of St. Thomas, there's no way to understand them, or even sayings in the Bible, unless you
Mm.
understand the idea of becoming enlightened through the serpent power, through Buddha,
Right.
you know. Same with Moses, that all came from the East. It came to the West and came into Greece. And Greece existed for thousands of years before, um, Judeo-Christianity. So they just misinterpreted it, all the concepts, because everything's written in symbolism and motifs and
Mm.
allegories. But in my book on the fairy tales, I found there's a whole 10 different motifs and patterns that the children go through in the fairy tales, but the child in the fairy tales is really the human soul on its path to enlightenment.
Hmm.
And you can use the same 10 motifs, but in the myths, there's 17 motifs that happen. One of them is
Right.
the very first one is the missing father and missing mother. Nobody says really that I know of has really looked into this, because you see all of them. And like Zeus, he had to basically kill his father.
Right.
And so did Cronus, who was his father, and Jesus really didn't. He had a foster father. I mean, all of them. Little Red Riding Hood had no father. Um, Little Snow White, the father wasn't there. Hands on Gretel, the father wasn't there. So the whole idea of the mother and father disappears has to do with evolution. You have
Okay.
to step away. You have to move out of the old house, but really the old paradigm,
Hmm.
to become enlightened, and
Right.
not just physically, mentally, and spiritually. So
Hmm.
you have to leave them. Sometimes there's all sorts of different that's symbolized in a million different ways.
Hmm.
Anyways, that's not what we're talking. I don't want to get too far off.
Right, that's for another video, the symbolism in the fairy tales. But one thing I wanted to bring up that I've noticed, which I find fascinating, is that there's so many different ideas out there about enlightenment. There's so many books written on it and different ideas about it, and some conflicting, some not, and some are very simple. Some uh teachers have described enlightenment in a very simple way, and then there's other ones that go deeper into it, like you do. So I wanted to bring up this one, if you could see this: Enlightenment is Your Nature, which is one of my favorite books about enlightenment by Osho. And but he describes it in a very simple way. So there's this quote I wanted to read from this. It says, "A man who is enlightened, who has come to know who he is, who has faced himself, has no masks, has no character, has no rules to follow. There is no need, because each moment his consciousness is there and his actions arise out of his consciousness." And so I wanted to point out that, like, he was very simple about it, like he's like, enlightenment's real simple. It's just being in the present moment, you know, and so, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, is it your journey meant to lead you like simple at first and then go deeper into it as you learn more on the spiritual path?
Um, well, yeah, it's simple in the sense that you see the world without a philosophy.
Hmm.
You're not in a mental conservative or Republican or Democrat. You don't have any philosophy.
Hmm.
You, you just see what's happening at the moment, and then your higher intuition guides you what to say and what to do.
Right.
Basically, you're out of the loop. You're out of the matrix.
Hmm.
I mean, it's true, but at the same time, it can get so much more deeper, because
Right.
all the gods of the mythology are basically understood through the concept of Kundalini, the concept of becoming enlightened,
Right.
because it creates, you become another sort of godlike person. You have intellectual illumination. You're a genius. And the
Hmm.
whole thing also is that you can have different aspects of it. Like one person may think they're light because they're in tremendous bliss and their mind's quiet, but there's other people who don't get that, but they're incredible geniuses.
Okay.
They're like a Newton or a mathematical genius. There's some math geniuses. You give them a number and they could tell you, like in the calendar, 1,000 years what day it falls on.
Right.
So it's not just that. It also gives you moral expressions, in the sense you become very um, a moral person.
Right. So
Like,
you're conscious of other people and your effect on them.
well, if you don't have compassion,
Right.
you're not enlightened.
Right, exactly.
Like Abraham Lincoln, they say he walked, I don't know, there's some sort of story that he gave back 3 or 4 pennies to this person, and he was so honest about that.
Right.
Um, there's so many things about it, and people, they take their one specific that really affected them and think that that's all there is to it.
Right.
I'm enlightened because my thoughts are quiet, but they're
Mm.
become great artists. Like, take somebody like Leonardo da Vinci. I think he was enlightened in the sense that he had that energy moving in him, and he worked day and night. He used to like work 4 hours, go to sleep, work another 4 hours, and his curiosity is like one of the great geniuses of the world.
Right.
And the way it is, since the whole human race is evolving, the divine consciousness gives us the people we need at the time we need it. In other words,
Exactly. Hmm.
like all this thing, all these problems with energy and all that, there's going to be geniuses born that are going to solve all these problems.
Hmm.
And there's going to, same with music, and when and Gita, it talks about that when things, there's a quote, when things start to fall apart, these enlightened beings are born to set things straight.
Right.
So they also, person who becomes enlightened, they can have clairvoyance,
Mm.
empathy, they can be prophetic, they have psychic facilities in the
Mm.
sense that they could read people real easily. They can even read past lives and see where they are in the path. And one of the most important things compared to other people who take like drugs and say they're enlightened
Yeah.
is that when you have enlightened experience, it's long lasting.
Right.
You can become enlightened and it can last a lifetime.
Mm.
Like Gopi Krishna took him 12 years before it's fully enlightened, and it was a permanent state of awareness.
Right.
And other times you don't have that, you may not have that light inside you, but your artistic achievements may keep increasing, and your insight into all sorts of problems and psychology may just keep increasing, but it all doesn't happen at once. Because
Right.
I believe, you have more than one life to get to this state of consciousness.
Mm.
So, anything else? I mean,
Well, huh?
there's also another thing that's real interesting.
Hmm.
In Hindi, they call it Vaikari, Vaikari.
Okay.
It's sort of, once this energy starts to rise up, you become very poetic. You
Mm.
have great poetic powers. And a lot of poets, this energy just turned them from a regular person into a fantastic writer.
Right.
Somebody like Shakespeare
Hmm.
probably had a great, awakened Kundalini.
Exactly. Well, I think that the mystical experience is so profound and otherworldly that, poetry is one of the best ways to kind of convey certain experiences, that are mystical, that aren't, you can't really describe in normal, terms, physical terms.
Right, because uh, the language isn't made for it.
Hmm.
Gopi Krishna was pretty interesting in the sense, this happened to me once, not that it, like, I woke up from a dream. I woke up from sleeping at night, and I saw this light in my head, and from the light, it formed these little sentences,
Mm.
one word at a time. Then the sentences formed a paragraph. It was like I was just dictating what was given to me.
Right.
It didn't go on long enough, but somebody like a Moses,
Mm.
burning bush, that was probably internal.
Right, exactly.
You know, um, he they express it in symbolic form. On the mountain, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the whole mountain thing is the spiral. A pyramid really means fire in the center, and it creates a spiral. So all these things, they go up to the mountain and receive, they see God. Uh, it's it's basically going up to the highest chakra and being initiated into the higher realms.
Right. Wow. Well, my Zoom says I only have like 2 minutes left on the thing because I have to upgrade it, I'll have to do that before next time. But uh if we want to do some more, I can end this meeting and we can start a new one unless you want to wrap it up real quick in the next minute or so.
Yeah, let's just wrap it up because we have so much stuff to go through.
That's true.
There's possibly going through the mythology and see how they
Mhm.
relate to the stages of enlightenment.
Mm,
There's the fairy tale books.
definitely.
I mean, there's just a tremendous hope.
So this is a good little introduction video for people to get started, I think. And I'll upgrade my Zoom for next time so that we can go longer than 40 minutes.
Yeah, okay, well, that's
Mhm.
great.
All right. Well, thank you, Joseph, for being here and chatting with us and everyone on YouTube who will be tuning in later. You want to say anything more? Say goodbye to the audience?
Yeah, but just stay tuned because I have like 50 years of research
Hmm.
that really nobody can conceive of in the sense that it's just my own take on it. And I've been reading that whole time and experiencing things.
Definitely. Well, me and Joseph will be back with another video on Kundalini and enlightenment. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
All right.